And it named the children and when they were born, and I'm not going to go through.
Now there were 13 of those. 13 of those Connor children.
So my
Those Connor kids.
13 of those Connor kids.
This man talks about his mother and father having 11 children.
Well, maybe it was just 11.
Well, no, this is his father. They did have a bunch, and I don't see the number here, but it goes on and on.
Well, they had a lot of them.
It was just.
And Mama said the most quarrelsome people that she ever was around.
You get that many people around, I'm sure it can happen.
Well, this man ended this, and it was funny. I read this at the table the other day when we had a bunch of friends over. But he was just talking. He had remarried, and he had another wife, and he acted as a father to his children. But where it says, this is talking about his newest wife. She has been a mother to them, talking about his children, as she could have. I tried to be a father to her children. There's been to us 3 boys ranging in ages from 12 to 15. They can take care of us in our declining years. For the times we've been together, it's been a time of please and pleasure. I expect that I can say as much as any man living. I never did have at any time have to say to my wife, your bread is burnt or the coffee is not strong. I have never been drunk. I have never played a card, nor swore an oath, nor danced a step. I have tried to live and enjoy the peace and comfort of my family. This I'm satisfied of my 10 companies. I won't go in it. But
I think that is charming. Isn't that wonderful? I have never seen that or heard of that.
Well, I'm going to leave one here. Leave it here for you.
Do you have a copy?
I have a copy. I do.
Okay.
And this is something I won't read. I'll let you read it later. But this is what Aunt Jane wrote. Probably back in the 70s. No, that's not true because Jenny had passed away. So yeah, it would have probably been like late 70s. And it's just a recollection of her.
Of that Jane wrote?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm so excited to see you.
No, I wrote this. I wrote this.
Oh, you wrote that?
I wrote this.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay.
I remember very well. I wrote it when no, Jane did not write
Then somehow I missed it. Maybe I have one that Jane wrote.
Maybe
and
you
I didn't
did,
bring it.
No, but I remember very well. As a matter of fact, I have a copy of this. And they came from Mayfield, Illinois, and settled. Yeah, and when somebody was trying to show me how to do my to do my smartphone, you had to pick out 2 names that nobody would ever know. I mean, for your secret things. And I said, well, what in the world would I? He said, well, what was your first teacher's name? And where? And it was Miss Opal. And where were your parents married? And it was Kaufman County. And so that's
and nobody's gonna know.
Nobody's ever gonna know those 2 things about me.
That's good. Well, that's good.
But I've never had to use it because I don't.
Well, those are the things you choose. You did a good job.
Yeah.
You did well. Of course, then none of the kids will be able to figure it out either, nor would I. This is a photograph of a Pleasant Glade School.
District 100.
And I could pick out a couple of people. I picked out.
Yeah, this is before my time.
I think Jackson there, and I think Charlie maybe, but that would have been before your days.
I don't think I've ever seen. Where did you get this?
Mom had the photograph.
Okay, I don't remember. Oh, that's a bunch of people at that 2-room country school.
It is packed.
It is.
Somebody had literally written on the original photo. It was like in a pen, and it circled a couple of heads.
I thought maybe they wrote something.
No, I don't have anything on the back. But I'm just surprised they actually wrote on the photograph. So,
but do you know that when we came down, I presume that the classrooms are still there.
Yes, they are.
They lowered them. They took out all the bricks. It was built up on bricks. That was what how the room was, how it was carpeted. I mean, how they made it. And there was that much room. There was a lot of room under there where the boys would crawl under and I don't know what
do
they
whatever.
were doing, whatever they did. But they had taken all that out, and so it was sitting flat. These doors here were sitting flat on the floor where you walked in.
I see, and I think that's the way it
Set on
still
the
is.
ground, yeah.
And it's
That's
still
what
there.
it's-
It wasn't that long ago we drove
Yeah,
by it.
Yeah, when we came down, when Zoe was playing, I guess it was when she was playing volleyball.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. You and Tom came down, didn't
Yeah.
you? That's right. And you went to Goshen.
Yeah,
She played Dallas. I feel like I remember this too, right?
She was playing in Dallas on
Mhm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Dallas Convention Center.
And Tom says, you want to go by the house? And I said, yeah. And we went by the house, and I hardly recognized it. They moved the road really close to the house, really close.
Well, did it used to be further? I obviously used to be further away.
Oh yeah, it was. We had a big front yard, and and it was overgrown. And I said, I don't ever want to go back to see it again. But we went by Pleasant Lake.
It didn't look.
And
it didn't
Tenson
look
was
that
with
bad
us.
when I went by. Was Tenson? Oh, well then.
Tenson was with us.
Okay.
Yeah, Tenson was
Yeah,
there.
everybody was here. That's right. That's right. I'd forgotten about that. So yeah, that was, maybe 5 years ago.
Was it? Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe so.
It probably was. Mom was still alive.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
that would have been just about right. The house looked better when I drove by it last than it did the time before. And I don't know when the time before
Yeah.
was. I can't remember. But
But it looked awful when we saw it.
it's sad.
But that's the way it is.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like Mom's house. Really
Right.
looked pretty rough.
Yeah. Have you sold that?
I did. I sold it to. Do you remember Marcus Burridge?
Yes.
Okay, it's his son bought
Okay.
it, and he and his wife, and they bought a number of houses that they're using as rental properties.
Yeah.
And it let the person that was in there, they weren't able to purchase it.
Well, did they keep it very good? Your mom was always worried about that.
Not really. No.
No.
And
Well,
I was
guess
when I saw it, I was not
people who
always
rent
honest.
Just can't keep houses.
Evidently
If Tom and Fab are renting their house,
Mhm.
and I said she was telling me they had problems with the toilet. Yes, when I was down there, and she said that. And I said, did you call your landlady who lives in I don't know Montana someplace? And she said, yeah, just tell them to get a new one. And I said, does she understand? I mean, they have done so much to that place, and they are such good. I mean, immaculate people. And Tom says, I don't want to own a house because of that. I don't want to be troubled with the big problems of it. But they just call her, and she tells them,
Reflects
Go ahead and
your
do it.
cause
Of
for
course, they pay a fortune for it, but it's
Well, but they also take good care of it, so hopefully
Yeah.
they take good care of them too.
Right.
It's that way.
and it's a big house, 4 bedrooms and 4 baths.
So.
Yeah.
And it won't be long where there's not many people in this. Does Zoe live there now?
Oh yeah, she's
Okay, so she's
living there.
back. Good.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
she's
so
back there, yeah.
they're filling it
Oh,
up.
it's really good. I mean,
Good.
it's really good. I mean, rentals in this place are just unbelievable what they charge.
I can't imagine.
Oh, I just look at what she's living in and how much they're charging her. That's what my mortgage is
Yeah.
for my house. And trust me, her apartment will fit in my house 3 times at least.
Minimum.
At least.
But you can't start. You can't walk across
It
the
is.
street.
It is
to the
absurd,
Korean.
but space here is everything.
It is, absolutely.
Space.
Well, everything goes up. There's a lot of human density here.
Yeah, we paid $54,000 for this place.
Wow.
Whoa.
$54,000.
And that was in
1961.
1960. We bought it in 60.
That's right.
And we moved in 61. They were asking, I remember because Charlie was, the people that owned it, he was an attorney and Charlie knew him. And they started out at $64,000. And every Sunday I'd look in the paper to see, because I sort of, Charlie went around and he looked in the valley. Well, I didn't want to live in the valley because I always got lost in the valley. I said, Charles, you're going to have to tie a string to my car and I'll have to follow it back. And so he would go out, and he loved looking at houses, and I did not. I just wanted to see the ones that he liked. And so I liked this one. I said, yeah. And I never thought about it being a 1-story. I'm the only person on this street that has a 1-story house. And I bet I've had 5 or 6 people ring my doorbell and say, if you're ever ready to sell this house, we're looking for 1-story houses.
Oh.
And how good it is for me to have a one-story house.
I love having a one-story house.
Don't have to go up in it.
I just.
But I don't know how we got on that, but anyway. But anyway, it has just, I mean, it has been a money maker for us. It really has.
You know, absolutely. If you ever needed to sell, you can pretty quickly.
That's right.
Well, it's in a beautiful place.
It
And it
is.
is, and it's to us, and not being insulted and all. It's a museum. It's got, when I come in here and see things that I remember as a child, especially stuff from Jenny's.
I am so proud of where I came from, and I have a friend in Bel Air. Well, I mean, she's not a really close friend. She's a wonderful golfer, but we were talking one day, and she said, Joe, tell me about where you came from, and and I told her, and she said, how many people? And I said, I don't know. I said, there probably were in Pleasant Glade neighborhood, I'd say maybe 60 people. And she said, well, I got you beat. In where she came from in North Dakota, we had 300 people in her town. And from then on, we have been buddies. She says, she always says, you're the best. Because I'm proud of how I grew up. I said, listen, honey, I can remember when we didn't have electricity. And if you don't have electricity, you don't have a working toilet. And I said, I remember Sears Roebuck catalog. She said, oh my God. She says, nobody would believe us up here if they heard what we're talking about. and so we get each other when we see, because she knows and I know. But she says, the thing is, Joe, you have never changed from the time you were here. I've always been exactly who I am.
I love it.
And
yeah, that's we all came from good places, and we know that. We're
but I feel especially. I really think that it was a special thing to grow up like I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't bother me at the time. I mean, that's the way it
That
was.
was your life.
Uh-huh.
That was life.
Absolutely.
And everybody else was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And there was no shame in anything, because you were all doing good.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, why should you ever be ashamed of where you grew up? I said, I remember when we got electricity. My gosh, said I, we could have ice cream anytime we wanted. And then you taste that stuff, and nobody liked it, because you make it in a freezer and you make it in the ice cream.
Right.
Yeah.
Really, it wasn't as good. I guess that
It's not
would
the
be
same as Bluebell.
Now, when you were born, what we'll call the new house, the current house, had it already been built?
No, they built it when I was 3 years old. And that's when my grandmother came to live with us.
That was Lucy. Lucy T.
Lucy T. Lucy Bell Teat is her name. And I want to tell you, it was the most wonderful thing that happened to us. She had just a terrible life. She was married and had 3 children when her husband, who Mama said was, just the sweetest man she ever knew. It was a typhoid fever or something. He was like that, and she was 22 years old.
Wow.
With 3 children and no husband.
Under the 3 and under.
3 and under.
And Jenny was the
Jenny's
oldest at the time.
5 and under. Mama was 5.
Was she?
Yeah.
So she's
I
the
think about
oldest.
that. She was the oldest, and she had the 2 brothers. And so she said that she went back home to live with all of these people that, I think there were 13 children in that Connor family.
Wow. Yes, there's lots.
And she said they fought all the time. But anyway, until she got, I don't remember exactly, but anyway, I know that we had to have a new house. It was the one that, had been there for eons, and it was getting, anyway, so.
But now that was a Smith family farm.
That was a Smith. But anyway, when Mama and Daddy married, and she went into this household with the mother, whose name was Fidelia. Fidelia, what was her father's name? He was the colonel.
Biggs.
Fidelia Biggs. She was Fidelia Biggs Smith. But anyway, they lived there for about a year, and it was very tight. She said it was very, very difficult. And so Daddy was offered, Gus was offered this lumber yard. He could run this lumber yard in Eustis, Texas, which had about 200 people in it, and it was town. And Mama said it was just like a blessing. She said, you know, all of this fussing and fighting and everything, and so they were living in another little house. It was called the Old Crosby Place, and they moved from there to this place in town, and she said it was just heaven. It was just wonderful. And she said then the father,
This is Gus's father.
Gus's father, died, and Uncle Charlie died. One was, I think one was a heart condition. I think Charlie, he was the oldest of the boys. He had a heart condition, and he was going to med school. He hadn't started, but he had been accepted to med school. And he was going, and he died, and then his dad died 6 months later, and it was typhoid fever or something. So Daddy had to move back there because he was the second son. And he had to move back to this house with all of this stuff going on. But anyway, and Mama said, you know what? There wasn't anything you could do about it. That's the way it was. Because there was Uncle Homer left, Uncle Ross, Minnie, who else? Minnie's, Ethel, they had a sister named Ethel, and she died in childbirth. So they had her son, whose name was Dow, D-O-W. And so they moved back to the farm, and Daddy took over and started running it. Well, of course, then the mother died, and it was better, but we always had a hired hand, you know. And Uncle Homer was there, and Uncle Homer was the baby of the bunch. And anyway, she said Uncle Homer moved away. He married and moved away. But he always worked on the farm. But anyway, Daddy knew that Mama had to have help. I mean, she just couldn't do all of this by herself. And so he said that if we could get Miss Smith, he always called her Miss Smith. I mean, Miss Teeth. He always called her Miss Teeth.
This is Lucy.
Lucy.
Right.
Always called her Miss Teeth. If she would come with us because she needed a home badly. And so he said, well, we'll have to build a new house. And so we built a new house, and Granny came to live with us, and it was daylight again because she loved to cook.
Oh.
And it was another hand.
Well, sure. It was helpful to have her there. And it worked out both ways.
It worked out.
Bad.
I mean, and I hope that Granny knew how much it meant to all of us because we loved her. She was my roommate. We slept together. Jane and Ruth had separate beds, but Granny and I slept together. And she'd say her prayers every night. And I'd say, Granny, what do you have so much to be grateful for? And she says, oh, Joe. She says, I have a place to live where people love me, and I love them. And you know, and she would just turn over and go to sleep. And I'd think, I don't know how she does that. And so I've never forgotten how appreciative she was.
That's so sweet.
And when my grandmother died, I was 12 years old. And I was so upset. I just couldn't believe that she wouldn't be there. I was so mad at the doctor. I was mad at everybody. And I said I wasn't going to go to the funeral. And Mama said, you're going to the funeral. But I think now how much she meant to me.
You were 12.
I was 12 years old.
Who was still at home then? Your siblings?
Jane and Ruth and Jack.
So Jack was still there too.
Well, you have to figure it out.
Yeah, I had to do the math.
Yeah, when he went to high school. I mean, he was he was what, 3 years older than Jane? I can't remember. There's 3 years between Jane and Ruth and me.
Okay, so he was older, but not.
He was
much
9
older.
years younger than Charlie.
Charlie was the only child for quite some time.
Oh yes, and you know he never got over that.
There's something about that only child.
For 9 years, you were roommates.
We were roommates.
No, though the original home, you lived in it until the other one was complete.
And I remember they had this beautiful lightning rod on the top of it. It had a great big bronze glass ball on it.
I
And-
still have the weather vane. The rod is gone, and I don't know why. But I still have the weather vane that sat on top of it.
Well, is the ball still on?
It's not there.
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
I know it was the same one.
Right. Oh, I'm confident.
Yeah.
This was in the 70s. I went out, nobody was living there. And I went up on the roof and got it. Because we were going to sell it.
I
It was in
remember
the process
that.
of
I
being sold.
remember, I said, now what about the weather vane? And Mama told me that you had climbed up on the roof and got it.
And I still have it.
Yeah.
I still have the vane itself. I wish I had the rod. I used to have it from my father's house too, but when all the moving and everything else, I don't know where it went. But now, so some interesting things I know that you did have, and this was before the electricity, is you had a Sutherland generator. It was a carbide well.
Carbide. We had a carbide plant.
And a carbide plant, yes. And I mean, the kids may not know what that is.
Yeah, we
No,
put
you-
it in when we got the new house. And it was something, and we were never to talk about it because Daddy didn't want anybody else to think that we were having things that they couldn't have.
Right.
And it was not hard to do. They dug a big hole in the ground, they sank this great big
a big tank.
in it, about that, and then you poured carbide in this side of it that went down the side, and then you filled it with water. It was a toxic
It was water. It created a settling.
and it made a gas.
And they plumbed it from this tank underground into the home.
Mm-hmm.
And in each of the rooms, there was, it's not a wick, because that's not what it was, but there were two little metal pieces across, had holes in it.
Little
And
filaments.
you twisted a little key.
You would light it, and each room had its own, the stove.
That's cool.
Yeah, but
Never
you know
heard that.
what? And we had the new stove, and Daddy would not let Mama cook on it because he swore he could smell that it tasted of that gas.
Really?
It went into the bathroom. We built a bathroom, knowing that one of these days we would get
Would have plumbing.
have plumbing. And so it stayed in the bathroom in the tub because and was the only place they had unless they put it in the barn or one of the garages. But anyway, and we Daddy said that he just did not like food cooked on that gas stove. So Mama used a wood stove
Oh my goodness.
until we got electricity.
Wow.
And what year would that have been?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
When we got well, it was when Johnson, he was the one who got rural electrification for Texas. Now, when does Lyndon Johnson go to Washington?
Okay, that would have been like
62.
when he was House of Representative or Senator, because he was both, was he not?
When he first got elected.
Yeah, he was a school teacher.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what year it is. It's easy enough to find.
But it's
I'm looking it up right now.
because he was the one who got the rural electrification for us in East Texas. I don't know where else, but I know that was, whatever he did, I forgave him because
For electricity?
63,
Well, that's when he became president.
vice president.
Yeah, this is-
Well,
And then he
goes-
was with Hubert Humphrey from 65 to 69.
That's
That's
long. He
Go-
was also
Go back.
go
further.
back all the way
He's in the
to
Senate
his
or
first
House?
his first election.
okay.
Well, so do you remember when the electricity
That
came?
was it.
Oh,
That's the
my
36.
God.
How old do you think you would have been?
Oh, I was probably 10 or 12 or something like that.
So it was
I can't-
about the time that your
But
grandmother
I
passed
remember
away.
very well, we had to put the refrigerator in the hall.
Yeah, okay.
It was,
Right
a
around.
great big, it was a Serval, or no, it wasn't a Serval. I guess, I don't know what it was, but anyway, that was just incredible.
No, that's the same refrigerator you moved here to your
No,
I'm sorry.
But listen, it stayed in the hall because it was so big, that was the only place we had for it.
Wow.
But that was just a wonderful thing to have a refrigerator.
I think that Jenny, how she benefited from it. Now, what about now? You still cooked with wood.
He
I'm
still
guessing.
cooked with wood. And because then I think that I tell you, no, then right after that, we got a butane.
Oh, okay.
Butane came along,
Oh, okay.
and we got a butane stove, and you had to dig a hole and put that
Tank in
tank in
there,
it and that kind of thing. But on the back porch, for refrigeration, we had a great big wooden ice box. it was, it was at least that long. And every 3 days, I guess it was, a man came along and put like 50 pounds of ice in 2 different areas, and it would stay that way, until. And I want to tell you that made iced tea taste better with that ice in it. It was as crystal clear you could read a newspaper almost. It was so crystal clear. They had these wonderful ice makers. I mean, that made this ice.
Well, you know how you get it crystal clear? Because working in the bar now, like I know, you have to boil it. You have to boil it for a while
Really?
and then put it in there for it to turn out, because it takes out all of the impurities or what caused the inflection in the ice, like where you can't see through it, in other words.
Well,
So you have to, and it'll melt like that too. It'll be crystal clear.
Yeah, it
That's
was
cool.
But it was so. I mean, I think of every time I see them, and we had these glasses that had a big bowl on them and then a stem, and you could put that ice in there, and I mean, it was just you could see through it. It was just, and it tastes so good. It was just such a good taste.
They probably had a plant in Eustis, I'm guessing, maybe?
I think it came from Maybank.
Okay.
Eustis didn't have very much. Eustis was always a smaller town. Maybank was the biggest town, and then we rarely ever went to Canton for anything except school. Because we had to go to school up there because we were in Van Zandt County.
I see.
And see, Eustis was in Henderson County, and Maybank
So
was
it's
in Kaufman
Maybank.
County.
Right. Yeah, this is a Coppernook.
Yeah, and I want to tell you something before you're talking about. We never went to Canton. Up in Bel Air one day, I was standing talking to somebody down in the pro shop, and this guy came up and started talking, and he sounded a little bit Texan, but not very. And I thought, and he asked me where I was from, and I told him, and he said, "Listen, my grandfather was governor of Texas one year," and I said, "Who was that?" He said, "Have you ever heard of W. Leo Daniel?" Do you remember W. Leo Daniel?
We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
I've heard the story.
And so, but listen, the other day they called me, and he's doing a presentation of a movie thing on W. Leo Daniel, and he said, "Would you like to be interviewed? I would love to interview you about what you remember about my grandfather." And I said, "I would love to." So they had a camera and everything, and we went over the whole thing. I said, "Oh, I remember. He came to Canton." And I said, we never went to Canton on Saturday. We always went to either Eustis or Maybank. And of course, he said, "Well, why?" And I said, "Because one had a mercantile store and the other one had a grocery store." And I said,
The necessities.
and I said, "But I remember we went to Canton," and I said it had high sidewalks. I said it was like almost the length of a car high. And I said they were on that stage, and I said, and they played, it was W. Leo Daniel and the Hillbilly Boys, what were they called?
Like the
Soggy Bottom Boys?
Light Crust Doughboys.
The Light Crust Doughboys from Burroughs Mills.
Oh,
my goodness.
And he said, "Did you know that he wrote songs?" And I said, "Yes, he wrote Beautiful, Beautiful Texas." And he said, "Do you know the words to it?" And I said, "I do, but I can't sing."
You can write them down.
And he said, can you, and his wife was there, and she is from Russia. And she
my
was
goodness.
fascinated by all this. She's a big, gorgeous girl. And so I sang Beautiful, Beautiful Texas.
Did you really?
On
Where
camera.
can we get a recording?
I hope no.
Could you sing it for us now?
Sure, I'll sing it for him. Have you ever heard it?
I've never heard of
And
it.
he said they're really working to make it the state song. And I said, I thought all these years it had been the state
I
song.
have no idea.
You
I'm gonna try and look it
it's
up.
called Beautiful, Beautiful Texas, where the beautiful bluebonnets grow. I'm proud of our forefathers who fought at the Alamo. You can live on the plains or the mountains, or down where the sea breezes blow, but you still live in beautiful Texas, the most beautiful state that I know.
Oh man, that was
That was good.
But anyway, I diverse. But that's when I'm thinking about not going to. I said, but we never. And they said, well, why didn't you go to? And I said, well, because if my mama wanted to buy some, cloth. I mean, you know, she had to go to Maybach because Eustis didn't have one. Didn't have a mercantile store. What's a mercantile store? Well, you know.
Okay, that's a legitimate question for
And
someone.
so I said, that's the reason that we went there. And I remember going to Canton on that day, hearing Dudley O'Daniel.
And other than school, I mean, when you left Pleasant Glade, how many sixth grade?
No, it was grade 7th.
Okay, went through 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And then the remainder, was it 8, 9, 10, 11, I guess
It was
is high
11.
school.
It was 11 then, and you know
Right.
they added one.
Later on, that's
Yeah,
true.
right.
So then, now, when you were, because I mean, that was 12 plus miles. You know, it's probably about 15 miles, something
To
like that.
Canton?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was 18 miles.
Okay,
18
that
miles.
makes sense.
And when we rode a bus, which we did, to school, it was much longer because it went around to pick up all these kids and all these
These little side roads.
all these side roads. And it was, we had to leave by 6:30 in the morning.
Golly, I
And,
bet.
and nobody thought anything of it.
It's just the way it was.
You know, you didn't question it because what else were you going to do?
That was your job.
Right.
That's, well, you agreed.
Sounds like traveling in LA. We didn't advance too much.
When you think about it,
Oh, I gotta be there at 9. I better leave at 6:30.
it was at least good air. You
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
It
Darn
was.
it.
You
It
weren't
was
breathing
good.
carbon monoxide.
Well, I mean, now, do you remember when the road was first paved? Like the road in front of the house?
Oh, yes. And we,
Life changing.
we had dirt, sandy, and clay, and then it was all clay or sand.
Right.
And where we were, it was a lot of clay. And listen, you could just slide all over the place when that clay is wet. If you mold it, now it is. And listen, and it wasn't named. We didn't have like 19 was the name of the highway that we all drove to get to because it was concrete. It was a concrete highway.
Oh, okay.
It was called everybody. They have and 19 was everybody. If you can get to 19, this is what you do.
You just gotta get
Oh
there.
yeah, I remember very well when we got But now that was later on. I mean, I may have finished high school by the time we got a road put in there. I can't tell you when they did it. But I know lots of times they would have. No, I had to be. It was in high school or after that because if they had a big dance or they're having something, I could go if it wasn't raining.
Yeah, because that makes sense. How are you going to get down the
If it was
road?
raining, I couldn't go.
You'd be trapped almost.
And
Yeah.
I always had a date, and you just say there's just no way you can go. And listen,
Yeah.
I can remember walking across planks that the guys, the men in the county when they'd have a big rain and it would wash out the ridges.
Right.
They would just put planks across, and if the bus could come to the other side, we would walk across the planks to the bus,
Yeah.
Wow.
Just
and then pray we could get to 19.
God. That 19, you put all your hopes in that one.
or 198. Are you talking? Did you go toward Falvey or did you go 19?
19 went by Falvey.
Okay. 198. It's 198. Highway
Well,
198.
now where was 19?
19 goes between Athens and Canton,
Yeah.
which you can get around from like if you go by.
No, then we went 198
Right.
because we went right. But I was always thinking that was 19.
It's just been a while since you've been there. I don't know, but that makes sense. I would think. When you were in high school, were you the only one at home by then?
Oh, yeah.
And so Mom
Well,
and Jane.
no,
and
Ruth. I had one year with Ruth. She was a senior and I was a freshman.
Okay.
That was our age difference. I was a senior when he was a freshman.
Yeah.
We went to school in high school 1 year together.
Yep.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So then, when Mom went to Denton, is that right? She went to North Texas Teachers College.
North Texas State College.
Okay.
It was not Teachers College at all. It was a North Texas State College, which is now a university. I understand.
University of North Texas. Hmm.
Go Mean Green.
In Denton, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The alma mater of Mean Joe Green. But so then, when she left her there, you had 2 years at home alone, or with basically just you and your mom and dad.
That's right.
So things had changed a lot. Then all of a sudden now it's just you three there.
That's right.
Probably
So
quieter.
when it came time, I guess after you graduated from high school, then it was the following fall you headed to.
Actually, I went to summer school. I couldn't wait
Is that right?
to get.
How did you get to Denton? Not to Denton. I mean to Wake Up.
I had been down there before. I mean, I had been to see what it was like and see if I wanted to go.
Right.
And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Ruth. I guess Mom and Ruth took me down because I wanted to go to summer school, and because I just wanted the experience being away from home, I
Sure.
guess, and I was that reminded me of something. I know that I know Ruth was with us because she had been to North Texas, and so she said, and they were very strict. Being a Baptist college,
Yep.
they were very strict about things. You had to sign out if you went any place. You had to say where you were going and what time you would be back, and you had to be back in 4 hours.
And this is the dormitory. You were in a dorm.
Actually, I was in one of the houses. They had these elegant old houses they had turned into small, like they'd have 12 people there, and the dorms were closed for the summer to redo and everything. And I was in one of the houses in which I loved and stayed. I went to Alexander Hall the next semester, but I didn't like it nearly as much as I liked the house, so I got back into the house. But it made me something, Ruth. I know Ruth said, well, Joe, I want to tell you. He says that Baylor, the only thing it lacks to be designated as a penitentiary has a fence around it.
Wow.
When they told me all the things you couldn't do and all the rules you had to obey by, and she said, the only thing that they need is a fence around it, and it would be a penitentiary.
That's an impressive thing to hear from Grandma because
No, that's my sister. That's my sister.
That's his grandma.
Oh, that's right. Because she just didn't quite understand, why they had to have all of. Well, it didn't bother me. I wasn't going to do anything that they thought I might anyway. So I didn't care what they wanted me to do as long as it was lawful and I was willing to do it.
You were just trying to get out of the house. It seemed like. So you were there at Baylor for 4 years,
4 years.
and then what did you do?
I went to Ellis. I had worked one summer in Canton for the Canton Herald because my major was journalism.
Sure. Uh-huh.
And so I worked there, and I went around, and I sold ads mostly. But if anybody had, and they had all of these little, communities where they had places in the paper where there was what was going on, and I would come in and write those up, and just that kind of thing. It was just a summer there with Ruth and Harold and.
So you stayed in town?
I stayed in
with Mom and
town.
Dad?
No, I know I didn't. I stayed with. I can't remember. It was on Buffalo. I can't remember the name of. It was one of the. It was a lady who was a widow, and I had a room there, and I ate at the
Dixie Hotel.
Dixie Hotel,
Oh Lord, we've heard stories about that place.
or with Ruth and Harold and
Jake and
Jake
Diane.
and Jake and Lola.
Yeah.
They were so good to me. They were so sweet to me, and they never acted like I was imposing on them at all. They were and Jake was just like a brother-in-law. I mean, he was like a brother. I mean, they had such a good time together. Those four people just hit it off so good.
Very close friends.
Very
Incredibly
close.
close friends, yeah.
It was.
Yeah. I remember Jake quite fondly.
And,
And Lily.
Everyone.
And he was such a tease, and Harold and Jake were both teases, and they just loved. I think they kept me around just to tease me,
That's where he gets it from, evidently.
But it was just wonderful. I mean, they just were wonderful people, and I want to tell you about. Can I tell you about Ruth and Harold?
Sure.
How they met?
No, I don't know the story that I.
Well, my mother said that they played on blankets together. In the summertime we had what they called, it was, what was it? It was called revivals. They had church revivals.
Right.
It was too hot in churches, so they had every, I don't know if it was every night or maybe it was 1 week out of the month. All the churches would have revivals, and they would build this thing, and they would put bushes and everything on the top of it, so it'd keep it cool at night. And you would go and you would hear the preacher talk, and they would, all of these things they would threaten you with, and and people walking down the aisle, accepting Jesus. And listen, it was we went because we didn't have anything else to do.
Sure.
It was entertaining.
It was entertaining. It was entertaining. They had good music.
Yeah.
And so it was very entertaining. Well, but the Falvey people we would interchange. We'd go to Falvey sometimes and to Pleasant Glades sometimes. And Pleasant Glades was where we lived, and
Sure.
Falvey was where your mom, my
dad lived there.
Your dad. And they would put old school quilts on the ground, and they put the kids out there, and somebody would watch them so they didn't crawl away. and she said, I can remember Ruth and Harold playing on the ground.
Oh, baby.
How neat.
That was, now, when you were at, by the time you'd come back, well, let me back up. I guess what my question is, where was everybody, I know Uncle Charlie, where he was, but Uncle Jack and Aunt Jane, about this time that, now you've already left, or let's just say while you're at college, where were they and what were they doing?
Well, let's see. Well, Charlie was in Athens.
Right.
He ran the bank in Eustis. My dad had bought principal interest in the bank, and so he put Charlie there. But Charlie, he had a better offer, and he wanted to get out from under Daddy. Daddy was pretty. He wanted to do, so he took a job in Athens. The same thing in a bank in Athens.
I see.
So he and Grace actually lived there for the rest of their lives.
Understood. And then what about Aunt Jane and Uncle Jack?
Jack had taken a job selling machinery. I know he worked for Massey Harris
Right?
for a long
Sure,
time.
uh-huh.
And there was one other place, I think it was more heavy. They were in Dallas they came back to Canton one time because he was gone so much.
Right.
That they lived there on Highway 19, going from Athens to Canton.
Okay.
They lived on 19, and then they moved to Electra, Texas. Now, Electra, Texas is out past Wichita
Sure.
Falls.
So that's where Uncle Joe's family
That's where Uncle Joe's family lived. But they lived there, and I remember visiting them there in Electra for several times. And then they moved back to Dallas, and that's where they lived for the rest of their life. They always lived. Oh no, they came to California.
They near Sacramento or in that
Sacramento. They came from Sacramento because they came down here it was either, I can't remember, it was Christmas or Thanksgiving. And I know just before they came, like the week before they came, now I had made my cornbread and put it in the fridge. I had done everything I could think of, made the pie crust, and those were frozen. But I didn't expect this. But I was playing golf one day, and when Charlie, I think it was on a Sunday afternoon. No, I know it was on a Sunday afternoon, and somebody had dripped. It was raining, and there was rain on the concrete in the underneath the covering, and I slipped and fell and broke my wrist. This was about a week before Jack and Naomi were coming down for.
Was it Thanksgiving?
I think it was Thanksgiving. I don't think it was Christmas. But honey, I want to tell you that was one of the best Thanksgivings. Naomi was a wonderful cook, and she loved cooking. And I had everything, in good shape. And the only thing that I couldn't do was make the beds properly because I couldn't pull down the fitted sheets.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good Thanksgiving where you didn't have to do a lot of work.
It was wonderful, and it was more fun. I mean, I I certainly wanted them to come. I did not want to postpone that.
Right.
Because we just, Naomi was a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely.
She was a lot of fun, and I loved her dearly.
She
And
was indeed a very sweet woman.
she really was.
Right.
And a little tiny thing, and Jack was enormous,
Oh yeah, they were day and night different. They were.
Yeah.
Now, then at this time, what about Aunt Jane? Now, how did she and Uncle Joe meet?
They met when in school, or I'm not sure, he did not go to North Texas State. I don't
He went
know.
to TCU.
Joe's a
Yeah,
football
yeah, he
player,
went to
was he not?
TCU. I was going to say, he
Yeah.
did not go to North, he went to TCU. But
Yeah,
I
he was-
can't remember exactly how they met. But I got to thinking one day, Mom and Daddy had these 5 children. They never came to one of them's wedding.
Really?
Not one.
Well,
Well, we didn't. It was our decision. I mean, Daddy, that he would say, "I will give you money, but if you want to spend it however you want it." And we decided, and we all took the money and had our private weddings. He never, that Mom and Daddy, and you know what? I never thought that was. It was just the simple best thing to do, and I never missed it at all. I did not want to have to write all those thank you notes for shower gifts. I said I'd rather work and buy it than have to do all of that.
well, I understand that too.
I don't know how Charlie and Grace got married, and I'm not sure about Jack and Naomi, but I know that your mom and dad. Do you know how they got married?
Justice of the Peace in Van Zandt. I know in Canton.
Yeah.
Right. But that's pretty much all I know.
Yeah,
But I think
and,
that's really not a place
and
to.
Charlie and I were in Dallas, Texas. We got married in Dallas
Well,
at the Juniors Heights Baptist Church.
let's back up then,
Yeah.
because we were kind of on that track a little bit earlier. Is that I was going to ask? So you came in and worked at the Canton Herald, went back to school,
Went back to school.
graduated, and then you're going to Dallas.
Now I'm going to Dallas.
Okay, and then what? You had a job lined up there before you left.
No, there's a commission. I can't remember. All I remember was this beautiful woman who was my boss. It was like customers satisfaction or something. I don't know it, but anyway, I worked there for just a short while because it was boring. But I want to tell you, this was one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. She was one, and I was fascinated by her. But anyway, I didn't stay there long. But then I heard there was an opening at this advertising agency called Rogers and Smith Advertising Agency, and I thought I would go to the Dallas Morning News. Well, we went on a school trip one time, and I could see that I didn't think that I was going to fit in there. And so I said, okay, well, I could take shorthand, I could type. So I said, okay, I will be a secretary. And so I went in and I became a secretary, and to a woman who had a big. Our company represented Brandon. We represented a big mattress company that was right down the road to Austin. It was right outside of Dallas. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a big mattress factory, and we had some really big. It was a big site. As a matter of fact, they had another office in Kansas City, Missouri. And the man who ran it was named Mr. Smith, and I can't remember his first name.
Last name's easy to remember.
But it was a lot of fun. He got me to join the where you fly around and you help people out. It was the
Peace Corps?
It was airplanes. What do you call it? I have a picture of me. I still have my picture of this.
You were like a stewardess, or they called back then?
No. I was going to be a stewardess. I was going to be a stewardess. This is what I was all signed up to go, and you had to go to this school in Chicago, and the cafeteria caught on fire and burned down. And so they said it would be at least 6 months before they could get it working, and then we could come back. Well, by that time, I'd changed my mind altogether, and I wasn't going to go. And so that's when I got the job then where I met Charlie. And then, what was we were talking?
Well, now how did you meet Charlie? You were working there.
I was working there, and it was at noon, and the receptionist had gone for lunch, and I was filling in for her, and this man came in and looked down and said that he had an appointment with Mr. Smith, and I wish I could remember his. We didn't call him Mr. Smith, we called him by his first name, and I can't remember it. But I can see his face, and he was having an affair with one of the women. Actually, it was his secretary.
Oh.
And we,
How stereotypical.
and we all had a good time. And his wife knew it. She didn't really care, I don't think. But anyway, he would always come on to anybody, I guess. But anyway, air control.
Air traffic controller.
No, it's civilian.
Oh, Civil Air Patrol.
Civil Air Patrol.
Okay.
So he got us to join the ones who would join Civil Air Patrol, and I still have my little thing.
Oh, big.
And anyway, so that with Charlie.
No, what year are we talking now?
We're talking 49. I graduated in 49, so this has to be probably the fall, or I can't remember exactly, or the beginning of 50.
Okay, but I understand.
I can't remember exactly, but anyway, we had to do so many hours of work anyway, Mr. Smith had this great big, he was very big in the Civilian Air Patrol, and he wanted us all to, I don't know why, we all flew down to, well, it was some big resort in Central Texas.
Okay.
It was a big resort. We all went down there for this, and at this time, they had asked Charlie to stay and set up, when he talked to Mr. Smith, Howard, when he talked to Howard Smith, he asked him would he stay and set up the television department for the company, for Rogers and Smith, here and in St. Louis, in
Kansas City?
Kansas City. And so Charlie said yes. And Charlie had to join the Civil Air Patrol too.
Okay.
And there were several people. I mean, and actually Charlie had come there to meet him, but he also the guy who was head of his flying school. Charlie ran the flying school for the
WASP.
The WASP,
right?
the women's
Air.
Service?
Women's air. What? Women's
Google it, sweetie.
air. I have it written down somewhere.
We remembered it, now I can't
The
remember.
funny thing was, Mandy was telling me this, talking about it, and I can remember it the other day, but I'm the same way.
Yeah,
But they delivered aircraft, and stuff
well,
like
yeah,
that.
they did a lot of
Back
things.
during
They did towing. They target towing. They tried out mechanics that had been worked over to see if they worked right. And they lost 10 or 12 people.
I didn't know how many.
Well, I used to know. And anyway,
trying to find it.
the whole thing was, we all went down to this big thing, and down there, Charlie was, I could see that he was really interested in me, and so we just sort of hit it off really good. And so when we came back, I know he had just, Charlie was 20 years older than me,
I didn't know that.
and I did have a lot of boyfriends, but none of them were serious. Well, I was engaged once, but thank heavens that didn't happen. But I loved his family. I just loved his mom and dad, and I have the sweetest letters from them. And she wrote my mom for a long time because she'd say, she always wanted to know how I was. And I loved them, and I loved John. I liked him. He was really handsome, but honey, he was going to be a writer.
Oh.
And I didn't think that
Women's Air Force Service pilot.
that's it. Yeah.
Yes.
And so anyway, I broke that engagement, and I just wasn't. I mean, I was having a good time, but I just fell head over heels in love with Charlie. And he would say, he probably, he
That was
told
going to
me,
be like my next question. I was going to ask, when was the first time you'd ever heard Pearlie Mae?
it was shortly after he felt that we really were going to make it, because he loved to tease. He was a great teaser, and it was after Daisy Mae, because he would tell these stories about how he met me, and they were outrageous. One was that. Have you heard this?
No, I haven't.
And this was when we were out here.
Oh, really?
I mean, it wasn't that there. It was after we were married and out here. And people did question, how did the two of you get together? And he'd say, well, it was like, and he would tell them if I went to the bathroom or something, and so I was gone, they would ask him, where'd you find her? And he said, well, I was out one day with a friend. We were driving along this country road, and I looked up and I saw these really straight furrows. Now, I didn't know he knew what a furrow was. And this is true. He said, I said to myself, I'm going to wait and see. So I could see somebody behind the mules, and I was going to see who that was that was applying those straight furrows. He said, when I came up, there she was. And I'm not kidding you. And then his other one was that he was down on Deep Ellum. If you remember,
Sure.
Deep Ellum?
It's still there.
Is it?
It's rejuvenated in the last 20 years.
He would tell them that he was walking down on Deep Ellum one day, and he found this girl sitting on a bench with her suitcase and a bird in a cage.
And a bird in a cage.
That sounds kooky.
Well, it was straight out of his mind. And he said, I asked her what she was doing. He said she was waiting for, it was a strip show or something to open. I mean, whatever they had down there. I don't know what they were selling.
It was pretty seedy.
I heard it was not something that you really wanted. But anyway, I was waiting because I was asking for a job at this whatever place it was, and he said, well,
establishment.
he would tell that one, and I said, well, Charlie, didn't they actually? He said some of them really and truly thought about it, and then when I would come back to the table, I'd say, has he been telling you stories? Because I could see them looking at
You
me.
knew.
Everybody's looking at
I mean, I'm not so sure. I mean, what are you doing here if you were doing that there? And I said, well, it's up to you to believe him or not. But
There you go.
I can see Uncle Charlie doing that.
oh yeah, very straight faced. I mean, and I said, I don't think they were. I don't believe they thought that.
When he lived in Los Angeles, was that home for him at the time?
No, when I met him, he had been he was married and got a divorce, and he had an 8-year-old daughter, and it was a very unhappy divorce thing, and so he left and went to New York, and a man named who ran NBC. It was a General Sarnoff. General Sarnoff was head of he owned NBC, and his son was one of Charlie's best friends. So he got a job at NBC when he went back to New York, and he lived there for 3 years. Then he was on his way back to Los Angeles because his mother and dad lived here. And he was coming back. It was his daughter, and he loved her, and she is just an absolutely fantastic person. And so he came back because he needed to see Lori more, and that's when he stopped off to see his head of his ground school, who was working at Rogers and Smith.
Okay.
And his name was Marvin Krieger. And Marvin had wanted me to, and he asked me several times to go out with him, and I wasn't going to go out with him. But anyway, that's how I met Charlie.
So shortly after, where did you get married? You were in Dallas?
We were married in Dallas. We were going to get married in Arizona because the governor of Arizona, Charlie knew very well, and he thought, well, we should get married. So anyway, he got this. Have you ever heard of? He was a big oil man. He was Charlie's best man. That's why I have to think of him. Guy Giverson.
I'm sure I've heard the name.
Yeah, Giverson. He owned a lot of oil wells, and Charlie was his attorney. And he wanted Charlie to go back to New York and take care of this big deal. It was going to be over $1 million, and at that time in 1952 was a lot of
$1
money.
million is still a lot of money.
And
for me.
so he said, how did I feel about putting it off? And I said, well, why don't we just get married and we'll have that for our honeymoon? And,
Wow.
and I think he thought, well, she's not as fluid as you is. Because I've read his some of the letters that he left, not to me, but he would say, I don't know if she knows what true love really is. He was wondering,
He was a little nervous about
yeah,
this.
he was a little nervous about taking, as my dad said, if he takes her on.
Funny, we had that same conversation about Guy taking on Mandy.
Yeah.
Poor bastard.
Because Charlie had been. I
You come back.
mean, he had been around. I mean, he had been around, and he knew everybody. I have a solid gold lighter that Cary Grant gave him that had been a value at just $1,700.
Wow.
But I mean, he knew everybody. He knew John Wayne. He knew Cary Grant. And here he is, this little Texas farm girl, and bringing her out here, and then to write up in the paper about. And of course, they always lie in the papers. And this, the woman who wrote it knew him very well. Had known him before he went. Had known him before he went back to New York. And he said that there was a notice that said. Charlie, for instance, got back from Texas with a new bride, blue-eyed, dark-haired Joe Smith, and Charlie has like 3 oil wells drilling in Texas or something like that because they have to put.
They're building it up.
They're
Yeah,
building
it's
it up, But anyway, here he is taking on somebody who really, he had been badly bitten once. He didn't want to do that again, particularly with the age thing. But as I'm telling you, as I've lived, as I'm here, it never, ever, I never thought about it. Never bothered me. I just couldn't understand why people didn't understand that Charlie was he was suave, he was funny, he was down to earth, he was loving, he was all the things that I wanted. And the fact that the only thing was, as I said, is that I probably will outlive him. But I said, I think that it's worth it to give it a try, and I'm not one moment sorry.
Oh, how sweet. That's.
Oh.
that
Oh,
is-
he couldn't be there couldn't be a better husband, there couldn't be a better father to my children. And so, age doesn't matter because he was so young at heart. He just wanted so much for us, and he, oh my God, he loved my family. He loved my mother just adored him. Of course he was pretty charming, but he loved coming to Texas.
He fell right into play. Coming to Canton and playing golf.
Yes, I remember those days.
He loved.
And then
He would
he
just-
joined the country
Oh,
club
yeah.
just so he could play in the tournaments because sometimes kids couldn't.
Yeah. And he and Harold, they played together, and they had, and Tom said to me in the last year, he said, Mom, I just want to tell you how much I love those summers in Texas. He said, coming to Canton and being able, he said, we'd leave, Charlie would go to interview. Charlie was interviewing all the merchants. He would go around and interview. Well, how did you do for Christmas? I mean, and what is your bestseller? He would go around interviewing everybody, and
Oh, everybody knew. I'm talking about Charles. She's talking about Charles.
Oh, Charles. her
Everybody
son.
knew him. Yes.
Yeah.
and every summer he would go around and interview everybody, and he didn't write it up. He just wanted to know how their year went. And Tom, of course, was on the bicycle going or at the country club, and it was just what it's just and Charlie. He always called her, Miss Smith, and he just loved Mama, and she did too. She knew that he was maybe just putting on a lot, but she loved it.
Yeah.
But
Well, and Uncle Charlie had a way to speak to you, like he was speaking only to you. Even as a kid. I just remember
because he
that.
was interested.
He was. He spoke to you. I remember sitting in the kitchen at that table back in maybe 1969. We were eating breakfast, and it was the one week that Mom and I came to spend. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but I remember him looking at me, and he said, "Tim Turner," and and that's all I remember. And he gave me the okay sign, and it stuck. He showed me exactly. He agreed with absolutely what I said, where I said with her, and I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, but
no, he just had that ability.
He had that ability, and he was sincere. I mean, it was not, but he knew to get across what he
wanted to say.
What he wanted to say.
Could I get you some water?
But I want to tell about Harold D.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the D ever stood for.
Nothing. It was the letter D and an initial.
Yep.
That was it. Well, I thought surely I would have heard what it was, but we always called him Harold D.
He was Harold D. Turner.
Harold D. Turner.
And that's
And I told Tim earlier, I said, your grandmother, I can see her face right
Thank
now. She was a very majestic person. She was very ramrod straight. She was not what you say beautiful, but she was striking. She had this iron gray hair that was real curly, and she did it up on the back of her neck. And I always was sort of half scared of her. She was sort of majestic. She really was. She carried herself beautifully. And I can remember that they lived in a house off 198.
indeed.
And it was up this dirt road, and it had columns on it. Do you remember that?
No.
The house had columns on it. And I was very impressed with those columns. And you just didn't see many. It wasn't a
Back then,
farmhouse. It wasn't a
especially,
farmhouse. It was a beautiful design building. Or I thought it was. It went way back. And all of these, he had everything that people might be able to use. In a farming community where nobody else had it within a range where they would
Go travel to get it.
And it was, you walked up some steps, and then there was just, it went back. I don't think I ever went to the back of it because I was sort of scared. It was
Probably kind of dark back there.
It was dark back there, but he had a wonderful reputation. And Falvey was, they were more up and coming than Pleasant Lake because they had the forge, they had the blacksmith.
Oh, the blacksmith, right?
And they had their own school. Well, we did too. Almost all these little communities had their own schools, and they had a school, and they had a little park. They had a Falvey Park, which was, that was really living high off the hog when your community had a park.
Oh, would it have been maybe down where the spring is? Do you know?
Down on the left-hand side.
If you're looking,
If you're going out the front door,
okay, yes.
down on the left-hand side.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it goes kind of downhill,
Yeah.
and there's just a natural spring. It's artesian, just bubbles up out of the ground.
And
That's not where we would go get water, was it?
No.
That's what I was just thinking, because that was well water.
Well, no, it's not. Well,
Right?
it's artesian water. It's groundwater that comes up. It comes out of the ground because somewhere where it originates is higher than where it's coming out.
Okay.
So it just naturally bubbles out of the water. But no, I didn't know if that was. I back up. It seems like I do remember my dad saying that it had been a park.
Yeah, it had been a park, and that was, and Pleasant Glade, we didn't have a park, and we did, and I want to tell you, the men got together, and they made us a park, and it was just, they cut down the trees, and I remember exactly, and listen, we had an Easter egg hunt there. Now, honey, it probably wasn't as big as this house, the whole park. The whole park. And it was, you cut down new trees and then haul them away, and burn the brush. But we had a picnic table. And I mean, we were just, I know exactly where it was and how thrilled we were to have a park. Because we didn't have one.
That's cool.
I'd never heard that story. Well, everybody gets a little jealous when somebody else has something.
I know, that's right.
That's right.
You guys were spoiled now.
Yeah, well, they had the Turner store. What, I don't know what it was called. If you went to Falvey to buy something, you were going to the Turner store.
I don't remember the original building. It moved around onto the highway. It was on the highway, I guess, but also on like a side road.
It faced the
North.
Well, it faced going toward Canton.
Yes, which is north.
Okay.
That's good.
Oh yeah, it faced there, and it was. You had to go up steps.
There might have been remnants of the building or something when I was really young, but I remember Dad telling me that the store that was there was a fellow by the name of Adrian McBee that ran it. Because, I just have very tiny recollection of my grandparents on my father's side. But because, they both passed away by the time I was 5 and before.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, we had moved to LaGrange and then just came back. It could have been when I was 3. We moved to LaGrange when I was 3. I was there for about 2 years, from the ages 3 to 5. So it's really foggy back then. I can't remember.
Well, I can't remember because I was away.
Sure.
Yeah, and
sure.
I can't remember that, but I remember that store because it was something to go to that store because he had everything. And not all the stores had that much, and he was on a highway. He was. And that was big.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Easy to get to once you can get to the highway.
And you can get to the highway to 198.
That's true. Well, I've seen similar things in recreations, and they are fascinating. When you walk in, there's just a lot of. It's kind of like walking into a different world.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't see a lot of things.
No.
When you're at home all the time, and that's doing home and school is about it. Unless you go into town. But you walk in a place like that where you can buy just about anything from foods
that you need
to a hammer and nails.
Yeah, right. And even though it was just he carried what they would probably want. He didn't carry everything. But anyway, then when Ruth and Harold met, and of course they'd known each other, but started going together, and I guess they were about 16.
They're in high school?
They were
Well, yeah,
high-
that's
oh,
about
yeah,
right.
they were in high
When
school.
Mom, I think Dad was 16 when, he and Mom had the wreck and they had to amputate his lower leg. So they had not graduated from school.
No.
He went back and graduated the next year, as I
He
remember.
did. But I remember the night that happened. And it was, anything like that was big, and particularly when Harold lost his leg. And I know that Ruth, she was not hurt badly at all. I think she had some cuts on her forehead or something, but it was, and I remember my mama was very upset about everything, and she was just upset for Ruth, and particularly because this man that she loved so had lost his leg, and they didn't know what. Well, anyway, Ruth was back to school, and she just didn't. It just didn't work for her because she was really upset about Harold, and so she came back, and how old were they when they got married?
I think they were 18.
I think they were too.
Good God, so different. Can't imagine getting married at
Yeah,
18. I've changed so much between now and then, so it's just hard to imagine that.
But
Times were
she-
very different back then.
Yes.
Yeah, she was. She knew that she loved Harold, and I remember the hat that she wore when she got married, and that was that. He was the only person that she ever, I don't even dated, as far as I know. I don't ever remember her dating anybody else.
I don't know. I've seen some things from college. That she may have gone out on dates with some people, but
Well, I doubt that very seriously. But anyway,
I don't know.
I don't either.
It's nothing but speculation.
But I know that she loved your dad, and I thought he just did. I thought I never ever thought about him being crippled in any way. I really didn't. It was not something that was ever brought up.
No, I'd ever. It's commonplace today for people, especially considering the wars and things we've been through, and the technology and prosthesis has just rocketed.
Oh, of course.
And it would have been great if it had something better, but he was limited to some extent. But he learned how to play golf, and that was and he was a big fisherman prior to, so it never stopped him from fishing or playing golf. So the things he loved.
And not only that, everybody loved him. He had this position. It was like his mother, who was, I said, he had sort of a majesty about him. He had her hair. He really looked like his mom a lot. He had her hair. It was really curly, and a lot of it. And
Sort of like Tim.
Well, until the Great Fire
Sort
of
of like
2018.
and he just, and of course I just adored him because he was handsome. He was a really handsome guy. And Ruth would, they would date, when he had his leg and he couldn't drive. So Mama would make me.
You told me about this. Well, your sister Joe has to go.
But you have to go, with them. And so, because Ruth was driving, and she would go we would go up and pick up Harold, and then we would go to the show, and they would let me out at the show. And I did not know what happened after, but they didn't go to the show.
They didn't go to the show.
They would take her and drop her off.
They would take me to the show, and dump me, and leave me out, and I would always say, now they say the movie ends at, and if you're not back here,
tell Mama.
because honey, the town would close up. I mean, as soon as the movie was over, the town closed up. And turned on all the
It was that
lights,
way
and
when I was a
everybody
kid.
went home. And I say, if you're not back when the movie closes, I'm going to tell Mama.
That's called leverage.
You came to an agreement. It was everybody knew where everyone stood.
And so that's the way it was. And my mother was just as happy with it. When you know somebody, you knew the family and everything. She was, and she loved Harold. And Harold was a real charmer. He was just a plain charmer without even trying. He just had a smile, and he always had something funny to say to you. And he and Lloyd were just together. They were something. They were formidable. They would tell you that what your boyfriend was doing. I mean, they have robbed the bank, and he's been in jail, and whatever.
And they could team up and get it done and do it right. Okay.
So.
Well, that answers a lot of questions.
and honey, I know that, as I say, I think about those two, that they were really meant to be together.
Oh, this makes me feel so good, Joe. Thank you. It's just wonderful things we've heard this afternoon and now tonight. I was afraid we'd wear you out.
Well, you haven't worn me out, but I think all out. But honey, I think about all those things. I have a lot of time on my hands, and I just love it. I love thinking about what a wonderful life I've had. And it's one that will never be lived again
That's
because
true.
of the situation. I mean, but I said, God has put me on this earth at the right time with the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do I don't have anything to complain about.
That's absolute contentment.
It is, and I said if oh how I would love for Charles if for him to know that Charles is doing well, and that Tom is just exceeding what you would dream for somebody, and remaining just solid and
good. They're good people.
Absolutely.
with a lot of Baptist,
There's
with some Baptist.
a lot of Baptist influence.
A little Baptist influence is not bad at all. But I really have. I have been so blessed and I'm just a very happy person.
I feel the same way. Well, it's just we were very lucky, and again, the timing and everything else, and we know the good blood there, and it may skip a generation, as everyone looks at me, but we know we passed.
That's not
it
true,
on.
Jim. That's not true. I mean, I know that the Crippy Union, I'm a little. But no, you have always. Everybody who's already met you, he is he's a merry person. He has just a wonderful disposition.
He does.
He
I'll
does.
vouch for that.
He does.